thank you all of you for having me here. It's such a pleasure. And before I start, I would like to make a few disclaimers. The very first disclaimer is I work with SWISSAID India, but the views I'm going to present today are are my personal views. So it doesn't necessarily represent my organization's philosophy, my organization's work, or my organization's political views. So the views I'm going to share today are my personal views. Uh, the very second, disclaimer is that I'm not an academic. I have some experience in research, and I love reading and writing and theoretizing. What I see and do, but I cannot call myself an academic. I've been a practitioner, and a practitioner on his own steep learning curve. Uh, so, uh, so what I'm going to talk today essentially is a challenge before us as a humanity, as a society in general, but especially challenge that is faced by the science, technology, management, engineering professionals, the STEM professionals, and by STEM professionals, I particularly focus on the younger generation. The people who are uh, graduating from their graduate schools in STEM qualifications, getting STEM qualifications, and are willing to work for the society. And they don't really want to go to corporations or serve corporations, but to are interested to work for the rural, tribal, marginal communities, even in urban areas. So I'm going to talk about from the perspective of those people like me, and I could relate with them because it's only 10-15 years ago I was a student at IIT, and when I had decided to work in the development field. So in that sense, it's been only 10 years since I have began my own personal journey. So I'm going to rather talk about and reflect on my own journey, and um, uh, then let's see how it unfolds. So I don't have any very concrete structure in my mind. So it's rather going to be a very free flowing discussion. But in the second half, I would like to open it for discussion and have your views on it. So broadly, the topic that Dr. Kongne has given to me is sustainable community development challenge for STEM professionals. Um, that's the topic. And when we were discussing the title of this talk, the very natural phrase that came to our mind was sustainable development or sustainable landscape management. The two very dominant discourses today. So we wanted to make it, sustainable development, but I requested him to, change it to sustainable community development. And so it's not only about, playing with the words. Uh, Let me assure you, I'm not playing with words. It means something to me, and even that new paradigm is emerging, and a lot of researchers, academics, thinkers, philosophers worldwide, from multiple disciplines, right from biology, evolutionary biology, till engineering and management. People are actually trying to build a new paradigm, and it's the time to embrace that paradigm and see how we could expand our work, expand our thinking. And that's why I wanted to make it sustainable community development. So broadly, I'm going to talk about four things. The very first is, what do I mean by sustainable community development? The second is, why is it challenging? Enabling sustainable community development, why is it challenging in general? Then, what are the challenges faced by the STEM professionals or the young STEM professionals? Is the third question. And the fourth question is, what can be done about it? Because all of us are, in a way, teachers. I mean, you're more experienced than me. You are in university setup. I work with communities, so I'm a community educator. But you're directly engaged with, younger generations, and you groom them for a few years. So what we as teachers could do for our next generation or the younger generations is the fourth question, which I said I would like to take it more interactively rather than me sharing my views. So I will definitely share my views, but I would like to hear from you all, and let's build some understanding around it. So I'll focus my initial talk or discussion about the first three questions. So let's start with what is sustainable community development and why I'm using this term. So the very first question comes in mind is, why not sustainable development? Why I'm adding the C in between? What's wrong with it? So, sustainable development, as you all know, the term was evolved after Brundtland Commission's work, and Brundtland Commission proposed this term. I wanted to take you, a little backward. I mean, in the timeline, what had happened before the Brundtland Commission. So in 1960s, when Rachel Carson wrote *The Silent Spring*, that was the time when societies, particularly in Western world, had started realizing consequences of industrial development or consequences of modernization. And Rachel Carson's *Silent Spring*, it's the title of the book. Rachel Carson is the author. So when Rachel Carson, many of you must be knowing about it. So Rachel Carson, when she wrote about *Silent Spring*, she had pointed out consequences of industrial pollution on the ecology. And around with that book, the environmental movement in America actually initiated in one way. And then came the series of books. Then somebody wrote about social cost of modernization, social cost of growth, social cost of industrialization. Then came the 1972 Club of Rome report on limits to growth, which actually highlighted that the planet has finite amount of resources, and we cannot continue growing infinitely, in economic terms, because there is a natural limit to how much growth can we have, how much economic activity can we have, which is based on the resource base. So that came in 1972, and so the movement was actually expanding and thought against the modernization, industrial growth, and its consequences was becoming more and more evident. And there were a clear divide between two sides, or two kind of thinkers. One who were proposing more aggressive neoliberal economic model, and on the other hand there were people who were talking about environmental ecological consequences of the kind of development these people were proposing. And to bridge that gap, so this is a critic. Those who have studied politics of sustainable development, they must be knowing, this is the critic, that Brundtland Commission was formed to bridge this divide. And by bringing two terms, sustainability and development, together, the Brundtland Commission actually addressed that debate, right? And some people also feel that Brundtland Commission actually masked over that debate. It's that Brundtland Commission had used the term development rather than using the term growth, and by development it meant the economic development. And he added, the Brundtland Commission added, sustainability component to it. So what Brundtland Commission essentially said was that, and there are many interesting ideas in their report. So, for example, intergenerational democracy, then maintaining resource base for future generations, equality. So there are very interesting concepts that they have talked about it. But at the same time, they also insisted for the development, and by development they meant the economic development. So only difference that they brought, through their deliberations and the report, was that now they had a position saying, development and sustainability are not two different isolated goals. Rather, they should go hand in hand, and we should be able to, achieve or accomplish development while ensuring sustainability of the resources. But from ecologist point of view, or from the point of view of, the core environmental activists or promoters of environmentally friendly development, even environmental friendly development is not a right phrase, but pro-environment development, for them, it was kind of a whitewash. They said, look, both, ecology can exist without society and without economy. By economy, I mean market economy, and it's possible. But neither market nor society can exist without ecology, right? So if you want to draw the Venn diagram, what should come first, and if you're thinking outside inward direction, then the ecology should come first. So you should value the ecology first, then society, and then your market, right? So if you can visualize the Venn diagram, right? So that's the kind of Venn diagram they had, created, and they were promoting at that time. A lot of literatures have that diagram, in discussion. So the point was that, value ecology first, then society, and then market, and so that things will be placed within their own limits. Otherwise, other model was to consider natural resources. They were not talking about ecology. The pro development or pro growth people, they were interested particularly in, expanding economy, creating wealth. And they knew that, wealth creation cannot be possible without exploitation of resources. By exploitation, you know it's not negative term. I mean, in an economic sense, I'm talking about exploitation. So using local natural resources for creating wealth, using human labor, for creating wealth. So in that sense, they were talking about maintaining resource base, because if the resource base, gets exploited or gets exhausted, then, the economic activity will come to a standstill. Since then, I mean, this is 1972 thinking. Since then, world has changed a lot. Even the nature of resources has also changed a lot. And so today's economy, although they rely on natural resources, they don't only rely on natural resources. So we have to rethink about 1972 debate. It's an old debate, but that's the underlying thought process, and two streams. And my point is that Bretland Commission wanted to, bring these two streams together, or as critics says, mask over it, so that this debate gets, resolved in some way. But it's true that since then, sustainable development has been a major discourse, if not dominant discourse. And only recently, sustainable development has been one of the dominant discourse, where people are now talking about SDGs and all of that. And many of you would be, aware of the critiques of SDG. A lot of people feel SDG has, everything under the sun in it. A second critic is that it's ever expanding agenda. I mean, more than 2,000 people worked for, more than 2 years, and everybody wanted to, pitch in their agenda in the list of long targets, and what is to be accomplished by 2030. So it was an ever expanding agenda for a very short duration of time, which is available to actually act. And third major critic was that, an development organization, or a government, or a philanthropic organization, or even an individual can claim to have contributed something to SDGs and report, contribution or progress in SDG without really having any significant change in the status quo. Right? The way schools are run, the way hospitals are run, or the health services are provided, right? You can still report some progress under goal 3, goal 4, goal 2, with the existing scenario, with the existing schemes and programs. So even if there is no real radical, ambitious shift in the way things are done, still there is a possibility, and one can report progress in SDG. That's the major critic. But yes, today it's the dominant discourse, and things are going with, with refined terminologies, with slightly more inclination towards, being environmentally responsible, being aware of climate change consequences, and trying to address those. Certainly, we have made a progress as a humanity, as a society as a whole. But still, the dominant discourse is, the growth oriented. We want our economies to expand. Economies want to create infrastructure. Countries like India, which have large number of population living under poverty reduction is a major challenge. And for poverty reduction, we have been emphasizing more on service delivery, in other words, giving free services like food supply, and subsidies on various things, has been a dominant discourse. And a lot of people, particularly economists, believe that this is the more pragmatic solution for the situation we have. Right? Unless you expand your economies, you make money, create wealth, you won't be able to invest in infrastructure, which creates a reinforcing loop for expanding economy further. And at the same time, you have to take care of marginalized, poor, rural, tribal, urban people. And so solution for that is providing better services, including both education and health. And there has been a debate on how to improve quality and access to education and health services. And we have made, as a country, we have made some progress in that direction, but there is a long way to go. And apart from that, then there are a lot of other services which are being provided to target poverty. But that has been a major discourse, dominant discourse, and that somehow, in the light of debate, I summarized for you briefly, and you may, if you are interested, I can share more literature on that. So, that is the context. That is what we are given, and we will have to, address the situation. So, on one hand, there is a need to take care of our ecosystems, ecological systems,